All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to crack open the National Electrical Code and really get to the bottom of a fundamental question. Why are some electrical wires super thick and others are really thin? We're going to demystify it all. I mean, you've probably seen it, right? You look at some wiring and it's just obvious they're different sizes. And it turns out there's a very, very important reason for that. It's not random at all. It's actually a super carefully designed system, and it's all about keeping us safe.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to talk about why wire size matters in the first place. Then we'll jump into the code's main safety rule, what I call the 125% rule. After that, we'll look at some of the smart exceptions, and finally, we'll cover the other safety checks that really complete the whole picture.
Okay, let's start with the big question. Why? Why all this fuss about wire size? Well, it's all about managing a danger that's literally hiding inside your walls.
It all boils down to one simple fact of physics. When you push electricity, that's the current, through a wire, you get resistance. And that resistance, it creates heat. It's just what happens. You can't avoid it.
I love this analogy because it makes it so clear. Think about it this way. Trying to shove way too much current through a tiny little wire is exactly like trying to force a fire hose worth of water through a garden hose. With the water, you're going to build up some serious dangerous pressure. With electricity, you get dangerous heat. Same idea, different result.
And that's exactly where the National Electrical Code, the NEC, comes into play. You know, it's easy to think of it as just some boring rule book for electricians, but it's not. At its core, it is a brilliant safety system designed specifically to manage that heat and stop fires before they can ever start.
So how does the code actually manage all that heat? Well, it starts with one of its most important ideas, something I like to think of as a built-in safety buffer. First, we've got to get two key definitions down. The first one is a continuous load. The NEC says that's anything that's going to run at its full power for 3 hours or more. So think about things like your water heater or all the lighting in a big office building. Those things are on for a long, long time. And on the flip side, you have a non-continuous load. This is the stuff you just use for a few minutes at a time. Your vacuum cleaner, a kitchen blender, a toaster, they pull a lot of juice, but only for a short burst. They just don't run long enough to build up that same kind of intense, sustained heat in the wires.
And that is the whole point. The reason the code splits these into two groups is because of that one thing we keep talking about, heat. A load that's running for hours and hours is putting way more thermal stress on a wire than something you just turn on for 5 minutes. It makes perfect sense.
And that brings us to the magic number from the code, 125%. Here's what it means. The code says for any of those continuous loads, you have to size the wire as if the load is actually 25% bigger than it is. That's the safety buffer. That's the cushion. The calculation itself is actually pretty simple. You just find your continuous loads, multiply that number by 125%, then you find all your non-continuous loads and take them at their face value, so 100%. Add those two results together, and that's the minimum size your wire has to be rated for. Okay, let's look at a real-world example here. Let's say you've got a circuit with a 20-amp heater, that's your continuous load, and then maybe 15 amps of just regular outlets, which are non-continuous. You don't just add 20 plus 15. No, you take that 20-amp heater and apply the 125% rule, which bumps it up to 25 amps for the calculation. Then you add the 15 amps from the outlets, so as you can see, your wire needs to be big enough to handle 40 amps, not 35. That extra 5 amps, that's your critical margin of safety against overheating.
Now, it's easy to think the code is just this rigid, inflexible thing, but it's actually really smart. It has built-in exceptions for situations where that extra safety buffer just isn't necessary.
And this slide shows the main exception perfectly. On the left, you've got the standard situation we just talked about. But check out the right side, the special case. If, and this is a big if your circuit breaker and all the equipment it's feeding are specifically tested and listed to run at 100% of their rating, you can skip that 25% bump.
And the logic here is totally sound. The special equipment, which is usually more expensive, is just built better. It's engineered to handle the heat of running at 100% capacity continuously without any problems. So, since the equipment itself can take the heat, the code says you don't need to build that extra safety margin into the wire size. It's a smart adjustment.
But hold on, we're not quite finished. Sizing the wire for heat is, without a doubt, the biggest piece of this puzzle. But the NEC wants electricians to think about a couple of other really important factors to make sure the system isn't just safe, but that it actually works well too.
So, there are a few other big ones here. First, the grounded conductor. That's usually your neutral wire. It has its own sizing rules to make sure it can do its job safely. And then there's something called voltage drop. Okay, think back to that water hose. If the hose is super long, the water pressure at the far end is going to be weaker, right? It's the same with electricity. Over a long wire, the voltage can literally drop. This isn't just a small annoyance. It can make your lights dim, it can shorten the life of expensive electronics, and it can even cause motors to struggle and burn out. That's why the code suggests keeping that drop under 5%. It's not just about safety, it's about protecting your stuff.
So at the end of the day, here's what you need to remember. Sizing an electrical wire isn't just one simple calculation. It's a whole system of checks and balances. It's about protecting against the very real danger of fire from heat, while also making sure the entire system works efficiently and reliably for years to come.
You know, the National Electrical Code is this amazing, invisible system that's working all around us all the time just to keep us safe. It kind of makes you wonder, right? What other complex, brilliantly designed systems are out there quietly making our modern lives possible? Thanks for joining me.